Fintan, you're very welcome to episode 3 of Scaling Your Business.
How you doing, Rian? Nice to be here. Thanks for
Thanks for joining me. Well, look, this podcast is all around kind of what we've identified as 13 business blind spots that can, impact an otherwise healthy business. And with guests, I'd like to jump into 3 to 4 of those particular blind spots that they're continuously working on overcoming, and in some cases they've almost mastered them. And the 4 that we're talking about today are: 1, accountability; 2, tying corporate goals to personal ones; 3, learned helplessness; and 4, capturing best practices. But before I jump into that, something I like to open the mic to those joining me and kind of from their point of view, give me a 30-second background on who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Fintan Murphy, and I run a company called Damson Cloud. And my kind of 30 seconds, I suppose, as my brother would say, who's also my business partner, I've never had a real job. So I've always run my own business pretty much from when I was about 19 years of age, and started out as an IT support business. And then very early on, very early on, we kind of saw the cloud as been the next big thing. Really, my brother did, and pushed us into that area. We have been a Google partner for 10 years, and we've been selling cloud solutions of some kind, or Web 2.0 as they were then, for 11 plus 12 years. So we really got into it before it was cool, as they say. And over the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, really, we've seen exceptional growth. I think remote working, obviously, at the moment, and cloud solutions have kind of become the be all and end all at the moment. And so we've seen huge growth in our business really in recent years. But it's the overnight success that took a decade and a half. It's that sort of
so
typical thing.
You've been working remotely probably 10 years before everyone else then.
Yeah. And that's really what we've been helping people with, particularly actually with the pandemic at the beginning. It was really, we were busy, but not necessarily with new work. It was just helping our own customers, kind of going, hey, Damson, Fintan, Donald, you guys have been doing this for 10 years. How do we run a remote team? Do you know what I mean? How do we keep morale up? How do we track, tasks? How do we keep people engaged when they're all working from home? You guys have been doing this for a decade, so that was really the questions that we started to get at the beginning. And obviously as the year rolled on, it changed. But at the start, March, April, that was really the kind of questions we were getting, So.
Awesome. The company name you've just mentioned there, Damson, I'd regret it if I didn't ask you to tell the story of the origins of the name. I saw it on your website, and brilliant.
Yeah, it's funny. The name of your company is like really important the day you're picking it, and then after that it's just the name. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. To you, and it's really funny. I can still remember myself and Donald sitting down in my parents' kitchen, because started in my bedroom, the company originally, when I was 19, 20. And I can remember us just trying to decide back in 2004, 2005, what would we call the company. And sitting there Googling names to see if the name was taken. And we used to have a tree house in our backyard in my parents' old house. And I say a tree house, it was more of a tree platform, but it was a tree house to us. Yeah. And it was a damson tree. My dad used to make kind of damson jam and things like that out of it. And so, yeah, we wanted something that was personal to us. It sounded like a good, strong name. And yeah, that's what we settled on that day. And then we kind of changed it from Damson Technologies to Damson Cloud when we moved. We technically set up a new business with the Damson Cloud part, which was sort of later on. Do you know what I mean?
Nice.
Damson's maintained itself all the way through, and including we merged with another company, Catalytic, in the UK. Our colleague Raheem, who's since left the business. And yeah, even through that, we maintained the name. So we felt it was nice to have that kind of personal story as well.
Awesome. And is such tree still standing?
The tree is still there. My parents don't own the house anymore, so we don't have access to the tree anymore. But I do actually have, people obviously won't be able to see this in the podcast, but I have a piece of the tree, which my dad is a wood turner
nice.
for his hobby, and he sort of turned this piece of the tree into a beautiful kind of abstract piece of art for those of you listening.
Yeah, well, people can watch it as well, just to see that clip of the.
Yeah, we can put up a picture. Yeah,
yeah, we'll put up
as well.
Well, look, let's jump into this. These four areas. First area I'd like to start with is accountability. You're the CEO, one of the co-founders of the business. So, as that, how do you evaluate your performance to kind of confirm whether you've met your expectations or not? Like, do you have a coach, someone you share stuff with, a group of people you talk to? I know you mentioned that your brother is your partner in the business.
Yeah. And I think it's a really interesting question, and I think it's something that business owners need to figure out, and they need to get right early on. And it's certainly something we didn't get right at the beginning. Do you know what I mean? And it was something that we learned over trial and error, as so many business owners do. But I do think it is really, really important to have that accountability, either to each other, as you say, if you're partnering in a business with several people. We, in the early days, we joined several business groups, and they were valuable. Bounce ideas off each other, and to have that accountability. I think accountability, as human beings, we're devils for letting stuff slip, and whether it's going to the gym or whatever the case may be, and being your own boss, it is a challenge. Do you know what I mean? And so you need to have that accountability, and whether that's someone who's just helping you out, a friend doing it for free, or whether that's a business coach, I think it's vital to the success of your business. And we now in the latter half of the business, we have a business coach, a permanent business coach, and that we work with on a regular basis. And we meet with Jamie, is the chap's name. Meet with Jamie at least once a month, if not more frequently. We try for every 2 weeks, but not always possible when you're busy. But important to keep that regularity as well. And that was where we would set our overarching goals, of what we're, what we would like to achieve, and assign them to different executives in the business, myself or Donal, and then we may get someone else in the business to work on that, or work on a subtask of that project. But then coming back and saying, within that space, have you done this, Fintan? And that I'm accountable as the CEO, to the business. Do you know what I mean? I think it is really important, because otherwise you do the day-to-day stuff, you do the firefighting stuff, but you don't necessarily reach those overarching goals. And we found that in the early days. Do you know what I mean? We didn't have that overarching strategy, because I was a teenager running a business. Basically, I was 18, 19. I had no idea what I was doing. So you learn those things in the beginning, and if you don't, your business won't grow. Do you know what I mean? And we did find that those early days, it was much slower. Do you know what I mean? Because we didn't take ourselves up out of the day-to-day and say, well, what is it we're trying to achieve here? What is our end goal? And as you say, the accountability piece. So I really feel that that's an area that we've fixed, for want of a better word. And it's something that we will keep within the business, I'd say, permanently. Do you know what I mean? I don't see us getting rid of our coach or similar accountability mechanism.
Yeah, you mentioned it's helped you speed up what I would say hitting those goals that you've set for yourself. And one of the other things you say is accountability. It's a word you've repeated a number of times. I know for myself, I work best when the fire is at its hottest underneath my ass. Until then, I'll probably not do much about the task, unless I've held someone else accountable, which is nuts that I'll do more for someone else than for myself. Crazy, I have a coach that I noticed myself putting on a few pounds, had a coach, and he holds me accountable to going out running. I could do the runs myself, but knowing that I'll get a call from him if I don't go out holds me accountable. We do these weekly meetings called canny meetings in our business. They're called continuous and never-ending improvement. So you pick a topic, and for 2 hours, it's the only thing you can talk about, and you dive deep into it to kind of push the needle forward in that specific area. And we have a timetable of each theme we'll focus on each week. Changes a lot with COVID as well.
Sure, yeah. That was actually one of the reasons we started working with this new coach was through COVID, and just changes in our focus. Do you know what I mean? And just how the methodologies he used was through through one of the local enterprise boards,
Mm.
and just how he focused us in on things we found really valuable. So we
Well,
kept working with him afterwards.
do you mind me asking what were some of the things that you, with the change of COVID, because I know that you've mentioned that you've been kind of working virtually for the last decade. What were some of the things when COVID hit that you said, you obviously mentioned earlier on the podcast around being there to help your clients, but what were some of the things that you didn't expect to hit you that hit you?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Well, I think like everybody else, initially we panicked, so there was that initial panic of like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And everybody just went, and stopped spending money. And I think we had a similar reaction. Do you know what I mean? We had some plans that we sort of put on hold. Should we hire people? Should we not? Should we expand this part of the business? Or, we were about to do this. Should we hold off? So there was that initial sort of, I think everybody did that a bit in March. Everybody just sort of freaked out and retracted in a little bit into their shells and just kind of went, let's just see what happens here, because it was the first lockdown. It was the first experience for everybody of that. But then I think what we didn't expect for us personally was just how busy we were. Do you know what I mean? And again, wasn't always with billable work. Sometimes it was just helping current customers with various challenges of working remotely, and just being there for our customers, but trying to be there for so many customers at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Normally our support requests would be fairly, they'd kind of tick over at a similar level. Do you know what I mean? And suddenly everybody was in the same boat at the same time. And so that was a challenge, do you know what I mean? But was one that we just had to face and figure out.
Yeah, I'm guessing your hours were much longer than usual then, just trying to cope with the number of people.
Yeah, and it was that I'm doing I do weekly videos, and my first one for this year is, I have it up on my whiteboard here, working from home, lockdown versus reality. Because one of the things I've noticed with people is that they think that working from home, or have assumed that working from home in the current environment is normal, and it's not. Do you know what I mean? I've been working from home for 10 years, and the last year is very different. It's not how it normally is. Do you know what I mean? And you would normally have social interactions with your friends, and you would normally meet them for lunch and go for coffees, and so there's a global pandemic, so there's that sort of, our window of tolerance for things is less, because we're all dealing with this extra pressure. So I think it was important for me to think about my own sort of work setup, and my partner was working from home, and my kid was at home at the start as well, so many of us homeschooling as well. So we all had these extra things that we were dealing with, and just to take stock of that and say, like, it's okay. It's okay to be a bit stressed about this stuff, and to try to figure out personal ways to cope with that. I got into the habit of going for a walk every single morning. Which was something before I kind of did haphazardly, but with COVID, I was like, no, I need this. I need to get out. I need to have this exercise to depressurize during the day, because normally, although I work from home, I would be in town maybe a day or two a week. I would be, meeting up with clients. I'd be going to Google, so those kind of things were gone during the lockdown. I think that's really the difference for a lot of people, and sort of making sure that you take that headspace,
Great point. I think I said it on one of the previous podcasts. If I have, I'm repeating myself, but I've seen some people. It was an American colleague said to me that some people are getting in their cars, driving around 2 or 3 blocks, and then coming back at the start of the day to feel like they've done a commute to work,
a loop or something. Yeah. I can totally understand that. Do you know what I mean? Just to sort of, we did the walk. We would drop our, when school's open again, we drop our son to school, and myself and Leslie would go for a walk in the park with the dog and come home. And so I would go with her when there was no need for me to go as well. Jimmy would just go as well. And we would both go for the walk. And that sort of felt like us as like a commute and just getting out in the fresh air. Do you know what I mean? Well, I think it's really important.
I'd agree with you now. In the past, I would have looked at that and been like, just get on with it. But the changing point for me was, like everyone else, I was working from home, and a friend came to me and said, you've got an office 15 minutes walk from where you live. I know, it's just a desk here and a desk there, but for a week and just walk that 15 minutes to the office, walk 15 minutes home for lunch, back and forth, and it will make a huge difference. And it has. It's made a huge difference. Just that separation from work from home. When I go home, I switch off. I try to switch off and watch Netflix or whatever, or hang out with my girlfriend. And And also now I get those 15 minutes times 4. I get an hour where I just listen to podcasts. A lot of people might listen to podcasts like myself when they're at work. And if you're being honest with yourself, you can't really listen to a podcast and work at the same time. So now I have
No, it's
my
music.
attention
Yeah.
just focus on the podcast now for that hour, which is amazing.
Yeah.
One of the things you said was your YouTube channel. You mentioned it. I checked it out. I would recommend anyone else going to check it out. It is great. You're growing at a good rate organically as well. I noticed that on your video that you put up less than 2 weeks ago, you were at 1,000 subs, and now you're probably going to hit 1.2 by the end of this week.
Yeah, no, we've got a good clip of growth on the YouTube channel, and that was kind of an interesting one for me in terms of changing our business. That our marketing strategy changed about 2 years ago, where we started doing this video content, and it was because it was something I was interested in. Do you know what I mean? And it's been hugely valuable to the business. But we also, I would caveat it that we don't create the videos for YouTube subscribers. That's not our prime prime goal. But it's nice, you know what I mean? It's nice to see that it's a success and that people are watching them. Do you know what I mean? Our goal really is to create content for our customers, and that's, they're the people who are interested in it, which is fine. And it's been useful. Like I create a video based on a conversation usually. A customer asks a question, I go, I'll make a good video,
And you reckon you can attribute some of the content that you've recorded, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube, to whether growing within internal accounts that you already have or taking on new accounts?
Yeah. So what it does is it does two things. It increases our authority, as an advisor, IT advisor. And that's both with customers and with Google partners and with Google themselves. Do you know what I mean? So it's actually very valuable for our relationship with Google as well. And so, people ask questions of like, does this company, if I refer this lead on, we get leads from Google, will they be able to handle it? Do they understand this topic or whatever? And, there's the CEO talking about that exact topic that this customer has a challenge with. So, those kind of things help. And then with new customers, what we find is it reduces the sales cycle time. So it doesn't necessarily lead to a new lead coming in necessarily. Sometimes it might, but generally it's that, the customer, when we go and meet them, will already actually have seen our YouTube channel and viewed a bunch of our content. And so then the conversation is just different. Do you know what I mean? We don't have to get into kind of pitching Damson as much. We just sort of talk about, well, how can we help them? So that's kind of been interesting. And then with current customers, they get great value from it because it's, like I said, even sometimes I would share a video and go, this one's for John, or this, this is for Bob, who we asked us this question last week or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And I would send that video specifically to them. They're like, oh, Fintan's gone and made a video just for me, But I know if that person has a question, then other customers will too, So I think it really creates a lot of value, but it also does take up a lot of time. Do you know what I mean? It was a decision the business had to make, because it's an investment, and we put a lot of money from a marketing point of view into creating the content. We video editors and stuff and content writers. So I mean, that's an investment in money and time.
It certainly is. And I'm a big believer in it myself, although it is a long-term play rather than a short-term play. So if you're getting into it for a short-term play, it's not going to pay off.
No. I started doing it 2 years ago and it's starting to pay off.
There you go.
Maybe after a year or so, we sort of saw some value in it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not a short-term thing. Don't get into it for short-term goals. You got to think in years.
Yeah, for sure. Next blind spot I want to focus on is capturing best practices. Probably one of the most common ones out there. Is capturing best practices, as we're always trying to make things better. Can you kind of talk me through how your organization captures best practices?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. And I think, again, coming back to the accountability piece, it's really important to do. Do you know what I mean? It's something that will help your organization grow, as you bring in new people into the business, having knowing what your processes and things are. And it's something we continue to work on. I think we're lucky in one sense, because as a Google partner, Google give you a lot of their best practices that you should follow for like a Google deployment or a migration, or so those kind of things are kind of in one sense ticked off for us, which is very useful as a partner. You can kind of go take that and often partners will stick with most of it. You might say, oh, change this bit or that bit, you know, but it gives you certainly a template. I think the harder piece is like your best practices for, you know, you'd mentioned, we were talking about this before, like HR onboarding, those kind of things. And that's something, you know, our team has grown a lot this year. And that's something that we had to figure out and we had to learn. And we brought in experts. Do you know what I mean? We hired a HR Suite was the company we hired, and they came in and told us this is how you should do it. And we were like, okay, great. I mean, people hire us. Do you know what I mean? When they want to know how to do a Google Workspace deployment and change management. So, you know, I would say lean on experts in areas that you're unsure of. Same with accounting and things like that. We have a very good accountancy firm, ProfitPal, that we worked with, and we worked with them for years, and they would have helped us with our best practices around finance and stuff like that. So, you know, that's really what I would recommend to people is to lean on experts in areas that you don't feel you know as well. Do you know what I mean? You don't feel comfortable with. And then documenting processes is probably the next most important thing, or maybe you could swap those around. I don't know, probably interchangeable, but definitely documenting processes within the business. And particularly a one-man band, a two-man band, as you grow, getting it out of your head. Okay, I know how it should be done. As you know, me, Mr. Business Owner or Mrs. Business Owner. But like, if someone came into your business, how would they know how to do that process if it's not documented and written down in a public fashion? And our setup for how we share information in the business is we default to open. So we don't, you know, often companies will say with documents, they say, why should we share this with employees? We say the opposite. We say, well, why shouldn't we? So what's the reason we shouldn't share this particular piece of information with an employee? It's HR information for everybody. Okay, well then, you know, you don't share that, obviously. Do you know what I mean? This is a, you know, security thing for our customers. So, you know, that's only shared with the people that need it. So, but if there isn't a reason, you know, that you shouldn't share, then just share it with everybody. Do you know what I mean? Don't, if you default to that open form of communication, I know it's easier in a smaller business, obviously, than in a large corporate, but we've always tried to default to that and found it valuable.
Yeah, they say that the lines of communication get blurry and get confusing after the 150th hire. Hire number 151 is where things get,
I can imagine that. It's hard to you reach that point, I think, even above 100, where like it's more difficult as the boss to go around and know everybody in the school or in the company. I'm getting confused with my example there, because my example is going to be, I moved schools. I went to Stratford College first, and there was only about 200 or so people in the school, 250. And so I kind of knew everybody. Do you know what I mean? I was one of these people that said hello to everyone in the morning. One of those kids. And then I moved to a bigger school down the road, the high school, and it had like 1,000 kids. And I remember being overwhelmed that, like, before I kind of knew everybody to an extent in the school, but with 1,000 people, it just wasn't possible. Do you know what I mean? And the same is true in a company. You know, like you say, you get to that 150 point, it's just not possible to sort of know everybody, you know, well.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned documenting as one of the things for capturing best practices, and you reference from new employees, onboarding new employees as an example. Another example could be, you know, client check-ins. There's plenty of ways that you can use documenting to capture best practices. Can you give me an example of how you've captured best practices in your organization that's paid off positively?
Yeah, we actually, with the client check-in one is a really good example. We've used some of the tools that we sell, like Google Forms and stuff, to collect information for customers before a meeting. And so we've created these sort of client check-ins. Now we had a lot at the end of the year because Google made some changes. I won't go down the rabbit hole of what the changes were. There's a video on our YouTube channel if anybody's interested. But there was a rebrand from G Suite to Workspace, and with that there was some changes to the sort of SKUs, and so it's stuff that would impact the customers, and we had to meet with a lot of our customers at the end of the year, and so we had to organize a huge amount of meetings, and we needed to create a new process for this. Now it's the process we're going to also use, or, you know, as a sort of our new client check-in process. We use a tool called Notions. I don't know if anyone's ever come across it. It's kind of funny because in Ireland, the word notions is sort of a funny word. A person having notions. Outside of Ireland, it doesn't have those connotations, but it's an interesting tool. It's a US company, and it's kind of a wiki system. Allows you to do a lot.
Is it spelled as you would normally spell Notions? There's no weird way.
Notions. Yeah, Notions.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Interesting tool. I hadn't heard of it before. Came across it last year. And that's been really, really valuable because you can sort of embed a lot of information, and it can kind of be anything. Like it's a it could be a project management tool, it could be a task management tool, it can kind of be everything, a little bit of a jack of all trades. And so that's been very valuable for us for creating the process. And then we use Google Forms to get some information from customers before the actual meeting. And that again helps to guide the meeting and figure out why are we there? I mean, I hate meetings for meeting's sake. So if you're doing a check-in with a customer or just having any meeting with anybody, what's the purpose of it? What is the outcome that you want? And what's the outcome that they want? And try to figure that out beforehand if you can, through email or, a form or whatever method you want. Because if you have one idea of the outcome and they have another, then, you're in the wrong place. I mean, very, very obvious for stuff like sales. Do you know what I mean? If you think the outcome of a sales meeting is going to be the deal is closed, and the customer thinks it's just going to be some more information, then you're way off. Do you know what I mean? So salespeople are used to hopefully trying to align those two things. But outside, you think one would hope so, but not always. But often outside of sales, people aren't necessarily trained in that. And so I always say, like, what is the agenda? Always have an agenda for a meeting, just so everybody's on the same page and people know what to expect. And I check in with the customer. I say, like, Rian, is this is what I'm expecting, the agenda, get a little bit of a mini contract going. Do you agree with this? Or is there anything you want to add to the agenda? Because I don't want to get to the meeting and then you throw something else in, but creating a process around that of, like, the customer having to fill in a form and, make some decisions, and having that process meant that when a customer, because what often happens is, particularly as a business owner, you will get people emailing you directly. I get this a lot at Christmas where they know we're closed. And so they won't email support. They'll email Fintan because, Fintan knows me. So he'll just respond to me. And so as a business owner, you'll often get that. And so having that process meant we could go, no, sorry, if you could just fill out the form, then we can book in the meeting. So that's great. Yeah, we will do that for you. I'm not saying we won't do it. We will do that for you, Rian, but I need you to fill out the form just so we can track it, And so it's a way of just forcing the process. Do you know what I mean? And it's, sometimes that will work to an extent, but, like, if you say, okay, for you, I'll make an exception, I'll do it, and then you keep doing that every time and I keep making an exception for you, then you're never going to follow my process. And that's the hardest part of a process, is not following it internally, although sometimes you can have challenges with people not following processes internally. But if you say to people and you say, this is how we do it, guys, and everybody agrees, the problem is when you bring in external people, your customers or whatever, getting them to follow the process. And so if people are rewarded for not following the process by always getting what they want, then that's not your best practice is never going to get there. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to document it, but you've also got to force it sometimes and say to the customer, no, I'm sorry, you're not going to get support unless you email support. Do you know what I mean? And giving your employees authority to do that as well. That's very important. I know that I may be bleeding into some other areas that we're going to talk about.
No, you're all right.
Like if you don't give other people authority in the business to say, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Customer, but you can't do it this way. You have to do it this way. Then if they don't feel they can say no, do you know what I mean? Then they'll go, oh, I'll fix that for you, and then the customer never follows the process. So,
well, there was a better time than ever to move on to the next stage. But before I do that, music to my ears, that the fact that you use an upfront contract. It's one of the core things that we teach and believe in here at Sandler. So that's music to my ears. The third area that I want to touch on is learned helplessness. I have difficulty saying that last word altogether.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah. In a nutshell, and a quick example would be a salesperson goes to their sales leader and says, hey, I've got this problem. can you help me? And the sales leader automatically helps them, not solving anyone's problems in the long term. Initially, they feel like they're solving a problem because they've got, a stroke. They feel like they've been the hero of the day or the moment. And the salesperson is also happy because they've got their problem solved, answered, but it's not helping anyone at all. It's that saying that you said, teach a man to fish and he'll eat for life, or feed a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, where I think I said it backwards, but you get what I'm saying. Learned helplessness. Why do you think this is so common? It's an easy blind spot to fix, super easy to fix. Why do you think it's so common?
I think because, like you'd said, that the person wants to fix it. Like that, you gave the example of the sales manager, and I think in small businesses you grow, you're used to doing everything. Do you know what I mean? So you're used to being the one as a small business owner initially, if you've started out, where you do all of the things. Do you know what I mean? And so it's easy to default back to that. Do you know what I mean? When someone comes to you and I think maybe in bigger businesses there could be other reasons, but certainly in small businesses, I think what can often happen is the boss person is just used to being that person that does it. And so when someone comes on and says, "How do you do this?" "Oh, I'll do it for you. I'll just jump in there." And I haven't necessarily even showed them, as you said, they've just fixed it for them. And I think it's about moving from that position of like, just because you're able to do the thing doesn't mean you're good at being the manager. Just because you're good at selling, a great salesperson isn't necessarily a good sales manager. As I'm sure you know.
Well, almost every company out there believes the opposite, but I believe what you say.
So I think it's a similar idea that like a business owner suddenly has to start learning to be the manager, to be, the person who sort of sits above it. And like, I'm a great delegator. I've always been good at that. Even when it was just myself and Donal, we outsourced a lot, and I would find ways of delegating tasks if I could. And so if you naturally default to that, then that's okay. You'll show someone how to do it. And, but if you're someone who normally just does the task themselves, that's more of a challenge for that type of individual, I think.
What role do you think ego has to play in learned helplessness, that disease spreading along a company? And when I say ego, I mean like you wanting to be the main man / woman of the hour.
I think it can sometimes be that. I've seen the learned helplessness where it's not that, that it's just the person means it out of the goodness of it. And it's just how they do stuff. They jump in and they just want to be, they fix it. I think I've probably suffered from that a bit, where I'm like, oh yeah, I know how to do that, and I jumping in too early. Do you know what I mean? And I had to learn over the years to be like, no, I need to give the guys space to. They're never going to learn if I don't give them space to learn. And if I'm always the one doing it, then maybe today, Rian, you run the meeting. Why don't you take center stage for this? And I think particularly when customers are used to dealing with you all the time, we brought in a new customer success lead last year. I'm still not used to 2020 being last year.
Yeah, it will take a while. I'm glad we're not in primary school anymore, because I always remember the first 2 weeks of the new year in primary school when we had to write the date in the top of the copy page. I always got it wrong.
Yeah. But do kids even write stuff in copybooks anymore?
Probably
all
not.
on iPads or tablets now. But what was I saying? Sorry, the learned helplessness and customer success lead. Yeah, so we've lost my train of thought slightly. So we new person start last year, and I kind of I had learned this from previously, but it was putting it into good practice and saying, right, I'm not going to abandon you, but I'm going to support you here. And then at the point that you feel comfortable, then I'm going to step back. Do you know what I mean? So this is a conversation, it's communication between the two of us. And so at the start, I was in all of the meetings, I was running them, and then I was letting the other person run the new person run the meetings with me. They're supporting, and then eventually when they felt comfortable, okay, I'm not going to attend this one, you're going to run this meeting on your own. So having again, that's coming back to the process piece, like that's what we decided to do. But if we hadn't, do you know what I mean, then it's me always jumping in and not letting the person actually have authority and have ownership, do you know what I mean, over their own role within the business, and let them feel that they could make decisions. Now, sometimes you can have the other way where people are just like dropped in us with no support. That's not good either. It's trying to find that balance, isn't it? Between the two.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to shadow some Sandler trainers in the past as I was coming up into the business when they were delivering corporate sessions with the likes of Salesforce, Oracle, whatnot. And through that, I got to know some of the sales leaders in there, and I was almost like a fly on the wall because I'd be sitting in the back of the classroom watching. And one of the first times I saw one of the, who I still hold in high regard as a great sales leader, do this. When I heard the term learned helplessness, I said he's doing the opposite of that. He's preventing that in his workplace. And
Yeah.
I still go back to that example of someone came up to him and they said, whatever his name is, can you help me with this? And he simply just said to them, what would you do if I wasn't here today?
Yeah.
You know, work that out, come back in an hour, we can sit down then. It's as easy as that. But I thought my mind, well, at the moment I didn't think anything of it. But a couple of years later, when that popped up, I said, "Oh wow, boom."
That's it. Yeah. I think that's a really interesting one. I heard. Actually, can't remember the guy's name. It's a YouTuber I was watching the other night, researching a video, and he said that in their company they did something interesting where people, if they came across something, a task that they couldn't achieve or do, because they didn't want people to not ask for help, but they needed to try hard to do it for 15 minutes. So set a timer for 15 minutes and try for another 15 minutes to do whatever it was. And then if you couldn't, then you would reach out for help. And I thought that was an interesting way of kind of balancing the two, of saying like you try to do it yourself, but also don't spend 2 hours.
Yeah,
do you know what I
you
mean?
can't just sit there for 15 minutes looking at the wall. You have to make some sort of.
You actually have to make, and you have to that was the other thing. Sorry, you have to document what you did over the 15 minutes to try and fix it, and then so you share that as well. See, this is the stuff I've tried, Rian. I sat down, I tried to do it 15 minutes. What would you, so you're helping people to start to look from the other perspective. They know in 15 minutes they're going to have to go and ask their colleagues, and so they know they're going to have to document it and think about it from those other perspectives, because they may come back and say, well, have you done this? Have you done that? I have, yeah. So I thought it was an interesting way of managing that,
Yeah, particularly in a large organization, they've got an advantage. They've got their peers at their disposal, at their at their dispense. They've got their peers. We'll move on. Last blind spot I want to touch on: tying corporate goals to personal goals. Kind of teeing this up for you. In a nutshell, people work harder for their own reasons. And one example here would be if you're talking to a sales rep, and let's say the maximum of commission they can make that year is 100,000, and they're top performing sales rep and they hit 100,000. Tying the corporate goal to the personal goal will be talking to them about like, what are you going to, let's say you hit your commission, you get your commission of 100,000. What are you going to spend that on? And then like reminding them and holding them accountable, but like tying the knot between, okay, you get 100,000, so what? But when you get 100,000, you're going to spend that on
buying a new house,
buying a new house, or a really new car, or whatever it is, or something for your family, put your daughter through college. You mentioned that this is why you set up the business the way that you have it. So I'll kind of give the floor to you.
Yeah, I think it's an easier one for me to answer.
Yeah,
definitely as a business owner, and you'd hope most business owners would be able to tie these two things together. I think if you can't, then you have to question why you're running that, your business or run the business the way you are. And I have to say, it didn't always. Do you know what I mean? We set up the technology business, as I said, when I was much younger. I'm 37 now. And set the business up when I was 19. And at the beginning, it sort of did what I wanted, and then in the middle, it didn't, and that was why we pivoted. And myself and Donald sat down. We looked at the cloud and how that sort of worked. But what we were really doing was, before we were sort of doing very traditional IT maintenance, and we were going out to businesses and to schools and stuff, and we were setting up servers and networks and all the very sort of traditional IT stuff. And really, we were saying, if we were to set up a business again, what would we want it to be and do. Do you know what I mean? And again, you're going back. It's a different conversation now, but you're going back over a decade, and we wanted a business that we could run from anywhere. We wanted a business that we could work from home, that we didn't need an office, that if we wanted to even move countries, it wouldn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Other than maybe drastic time zones, you know, that we could live in France or Spain or whatever, and we could still run the business the way that we do. We wanted flexibility. We wanted, you know, we were both, you know, starting to have families and kids and, you know, a house and all that kind of stuff. And so we wanted the business to support us both financially and emotionally and, you know, sort of work-life balance and all that kind of thing. So that was where we started. And sort of Damson Cloud was what grew out of the business that we had and those goals. Do you know what I mean? It was literally tying those two things together that created the company that we have. So now we have a business that we can run from anywhere. I just need my laptop here in front of me and an internet connection, and that's it. Do you know what I mean? And we have been very particular about the business that we have grown, the customers that we've taken on. Like the story that I tell about our customers, we used to have nearly 250 customers at one stage, and we got rid of nearly 200 customers. And
you're gonna have to talk me through that.
Yeah, people often go, what do you mean you got rid of customers? We did the 80-20 rule, and 92% of our revenue came from 50 clients. And all of the other customers, the other 200 or so, were smaller businesses at the time that we'd taken on in the very early days. And really, it's not about it being a negative for the customers, because we weren't adding value for them either. They weren't the 200 customers that weren't adding value for us. Also, we weren't adding value for them. So it was about finding for them a Google partner or an IT company that fitted better with their goals as well. Do you know what I mean? So now for us, we don't work really with companies at less than 50 employees. Most of our customers are in the hundreds, if not thousands of employees or users, as we kind of call them. And so we were very particular about the companies that we started to work with after that. Our business, after we did that, our business reached a point where the recurring revenue from the business covered our costs. And because we didn't have an office and we worked from home, and you know, it meant our cost base was extremely low, and that was all on purpose. And the recurring, you know, building a recurring revenue business was the most important thing to us. That was what came out of, as I said, the discussion with myself and Donald of what did we want our business to do. We wanted a business that could have a recurring revenue that we could build year over year over year. And you know, like the recurring revenue in the business when we merged with Raheem's company, which was probably I'm terrible at times, so don't quote me on it, but something like 8 years or so ago. Yeah, it was only like 60 grand or something like that. That was the recurring revenue bit, and the recurring revenue part went over $1 million, you know, about 2 years ago. So we've reached a stage now where the business is probably going to do 2 million this year in turnover. And we've half a dozen staff, and you know, we're still all working remotely. And that's how, you know, that's the business that we foresaw all them years ago. Do you know what I mean? It's taken us a long time to get here, but it was about thinking of those personal goals and thinking of those business goals and what we wanted our business to help us achieve in our personal lives. Do you know what I mean? Which it's now doing. Well, yeah, but I think it's maybe harder for employees. You know, you've got to do the same thing then for your employees, and that's more difficult. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, because they don't necessarily have the same buy-in to the business, and they shouldn't. I mean, that's okay. It's also accepting that like an employee is not going to love and you know, want and sell for your business as much
as you will.
Yeah, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? Because as you say, you've got to tie it to their own personal goals and what is it they want to achieve. So we're big into continuous learning. Our parents are both teachers, and so we come from an education background. And so for myself and Donald, we've always improved our own skills and things like that. But it's something we've done from day one with our employees and said, like, this is your, this is your path, your professional
Your
path.
roadmap.
Does this align with your goals? And is this what, we will support people in terms of paying for education and giving them time off to learn and helping them get Google certifications or other certifications. But we also say to people, to staff, go off and find courses that you might want to do and come back and say, just bring them to us and say, hey, Donald, Fintan, I'd be interested in doing this. Does this align with Damson's goals if I do this course on, communication or sandler training or whatever the case may be, and having that open communication and conversation that like people can do that they can bring ideas to you guys and say, I'm really interested in this. Would this tie in with the business? Because the business owner, you can tie it in. I was interested in video. So I said, hey, I think Damson should get into video because I'm the business owner, so I can do that. But like giving your staff agency to, to a degree to do the same thing is great, and that will help, as you say, tie in their personal goals with their work, which is, we spend so much time at work, like, why not? Do you know what I mean? It should be.
You spend a hell of a lot of your life at work, so why not enjoy it? Hats off to you, Fintan. You've, I know you're in your second decade of Damson, but you've achieved year-on-year growth for the last number of years, and you've set up a really nice business. So hats off to you for that.
Thanks.
Two quick things I want to touch on before we finish up. First of all is 2021 goals. I know you touched on your, you said revenue of 2 million. I don't know whether that was 2020 or that's 2021, but what are your 2021 goals?
Can I call you after my meeting with Jamie tomorrow when we set them? I think I have some of my own ones and sort of we haven't sort of solidified them. As I said, we are actually having our meeting tomorrow with our business coach. But I think I want to grow the business. Like we had incredible growth last year. We had 40, nearly 50% growth in revenue last year, which is astounding. I would hope for that kind of growth again, but also in the current scenario, I don't want to presume either. I don't think any of us can. I think for ourselves, it would be obviously continuing to see the business grow. That would be a number one goal. We want to grow our team, in particular areas within the business where we need more people in the kind of sales and marketing area, for any sales and marketing people out there listening. And we're going to be growing that part of the business, definitely. And so I think they're kind of the core things that we're working on. And then, some of those other areas we spoke about, the blind spots. I know there are some of those blind spots that we have, do you know what I mean, on your kind of list. And we're all about continuous improvement. We're the type of business that like we help organizations with digital transformation and change, and we help them look at their processes and improve them. And it's something that we do internally within our own business all the time. So I want to continue to work on that and continue to to grow our team, but also to look at ways, and take feedback where we can that we can improve within the business. And then outside of that, I think we've been very big within we're very, very focused on working with other Google partners. So we actually set up the Global Cloud Partner Association, which is an association of Google partners around the world, and we're big on getting other Google partners to work with each other. And something I actually mentioned in my rap video that we had at the end of last year, that has been a huge success and has been a huge support this year for 2020, sorry, for ourselves and for many other Google partners. So I think another personal goal for me would just be to kind of grow that out and expand that so that we've got more partners involved in that and more businesses that are working within it, because often it's people who are really competitors, but trying to get them to think of, okay, you're my competitor, but also you can be something else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you gave those 50 clients you got rid of to some of them.
Yeah. 200 clients we got rid of, actually.
200, so you kept 50. Yeah. So we've got
Yeah.
about 90 seconds left, 60 seconds left. And something that came into my head halfway through this was the first interview was with a guy called Pierce Dargan. His family owned the Kildare Stud Farm.
Oh, yeah.
He set up secret street tours as like a thing he does voluntarily outside of his business. I
Mm.
noticed on your LinkedIn in the volunteering section, you have chairperson at Educate Together and also you're part of Common Purpose Ireland. You want to give me kind of breakdown on one or both of those, just to give a
Yeah,
give a
sure.
shout out to them.
Yeah, I mean, Educate Common Purpose is a really brilliant organization, non-profit. They do leadership training. Anybody interested in leadership training, I'd highly recommend that they take a look at Common Purpose. Educate Together is something that is very close to my heart because I went to one of the first Educate Together schools, and my mum was principal of one of the early Educate Together schools as well. And it's an organization that I try to support as much as I can. So for those of you outside of Ireland, Educate Together is the second largest provider of primary education in Ireland.
Wow.
And yeah, they provide they have a learn together program, so they teach all religions, call teachers by
Yeah.
their first names, no uniforms. So it's an interesting it's an interesting group of schools, and I send my son to sort of things have come full circle. My son now goes to an Educate Together school, and
They're not just in Dublin, Cork, Galway, they're more common than that?
they're all over Ireland,
Okay.
and they've actually set up one or two schools in the UK as well. They've started to
Wow.
export their for the first time. I think it was maybe 2 years ago. They started to export their sort of methodology or
Yeah.
idea. So yeah, very interesting organization as well. So I always
Excellent.
try
Well,
to support them when I can.
I'll leave a link
Yeah,
to both of them below. I'll also leave a link to your YouTube, which currently just below 1.2 thousand subscribers, and obviously your LinkedIn as well. And thank you for your time today.
thanks very much, Rian. Appreciate you having me on.